Two Woburn men are facing federal human trafficking charges for allegedly smuggling Brazilians into the U.S. and then forcing them to work long hours at a pair of restaurants in the city for virtually no pay. It's an alarming story, but for advocates of labor trafficking victims, it is nothing new. Since 2016, nearly 200 people in Massachusetts have reached out to the National Human Trafficking Hotline to report allegations of forced labor. And as a new investigation from the GBH News Center for Investigative Reporting lays out, this is likely a vast undercount.
Most people have interacted with someone who is being trafficked and don't realize it. Think of it more as being someone is being forced to work in terrible conditions, usually dangerous conditions, for unfair or no pay, and they can't leave.
A few years back, Attorney General Maura Healey established an anti-human trafficking task force, and more than a decade ago, the state passed a law aimed at prosecuting perpetrators and supporting survivors. But the GBH News investigation found there hasn't been a single forced labor conviction by the state since that law passed in 2011. That includes the so-called employers of Catherine Piedad, who spent months working for a family in Newton in 2014, hoping to earn money to send back to her children in the Philippines. Instead, they treated her like property, but were never prosecuted. Catherine Piedad joins me now, along with GBH News Deputy Investigations Editor Jenifer McKim. Catherine, it's great to meet you, and Jenifer, thanks so much for being here. You know, virtually everybody knows about human trafficking. Sex trafficking, I'm sorry. You've done spectacular work. I would hazard to guess very few people know about labor trafficking. So could you fill in some blanks that were left there?
Thanks so much, Jim, for that. Yes, it's true. I've written a lot of stories on sex trafficking, and as we learned, it's a very underreported, misunderstood problem in America, and then we found that labor trafficking is even farther underground, that people just don't understand, that there are people, as you just heard the lawyer talk about, that are working as in house cleaners, working in construction, working in the fields, in all different ways in Massachusetts. And because because it's actual jobs, it's much harder to understand and see.
But I don't mean to overstate it, but the stories I read, and after having yours, this is a variation on slavery in the 21st century. Is it not in many of these cases?
Absolutely. They call it modern-day slavery, and Catherine can talk about that. People working for zero or very, very little pay, long, long hours, unable to leave their homes. It's really, really troubling. So
you were a nanny in the Philippines. Then you were brought here to work for a family in Newton. You work 6 days a week, from what I understand, right,
Yes.
Catherine? How many hours on a typical day?
I work like 6 a.m. to 11 p.m.
6 a.m. to 11 p.m.?
Yes.
And what were you able to do on your free day, the 7th day?
I'm just staying in the basement because I'm not allowed to go out.
You had to stay in the basement, and
Yes.
this family said you can't leave the facility, you can't leave the house.
Yes.
Did they take your passport?
Yes.
How long did this go on?
It seems like 2 months that they took my passport, and we have this kind of conversation that they're not paying my salary, and yeah.
They paid you nothing?
No.
Were you scared?
I'm scared, of course, because I don't have anyone in this country.
And you eventually called 911, am I not right?
Yes, that's emergency call on my phone.
And what kind of response? What did the police do?
Oh, they came to the house like after 5 minutes of conversation. Yeah.
And did they end up bringing charges against the family that had basically kept you captive in the basement of their house?
No, because they said it's a labor dispute.
Labor dispute. You know, one of the things that's most troubling about your story, not only that so much is going on, Jen, sort of, I was going to say under the radar, but it's really not under the radar. It's just not. I want to play a little sound from your piece from State Senator Lydia Edwards, obviously from Boston, on trafficking, followed by a lawyer who represents another survivor about the employer of that survivor. Here it is.
It's modern day slavery, for heaven's sake. Like, you don't get to be a slaver in 2022 and write a check and settle that. You should go to jail.
Unfortunately, it was very frustrating. It didn't work because upon the first notification that the AG's office was looking into this and the employer's practices were about to be exposed, they immediately fled the country.
You know, so correct me if I'm wrong, a federal anti-trafficking law, I think in 2000, a state anti-trafficking law in 2011, And that's the good news. The bad news is very few charges brought, and I think you report not one single conviction on the state level and one from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Why and why? Why so few charges and why so few convictions?
Well, as you heard from Catherine, for one thing, there's a lot of confusion about whether it's actual trafficking or a wage and hour violation, and a lot
How is that confusing? How is it confusing? I don't mean to argue with you. You work 6 days from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. and your 7th day, you're essentially kept captive in the basement and not paid.
Exactly. So it's astonishing to me, and I mean, we also spoke with the Attorney General, Maura Healey, who has very interested in prosecuting these cases, but there are challenges. There's also some people who have been rescued or escaped and really just want some restitution and to get on with their lives, or they have certain attachment to the children that they were taking care of. So there's a lot of things that have happened. There are some cases ongoing. There's a case coming up in the new year, likely related to sex trafficking being filed by the Attorney General's office, but really it is pretty stunning.
You know, it's almost the opposite, and I'm not telling you something you don't know, but when I hear your story, it's almost the opposite of deterrence. I mean, a lot of people, including a father who very movingly lost his daughter at Parkland, who was here the other night, talking about why he believes in the death penalty because of deterrence. The flip side of that is when no one's prosecuted, and even if you're prosecuted, you go free, there's almost no disincentive to treat people like Catherine was treated, because the worst that's going to happen, as Lydia Edwards says, you pay a fine, right?
Exactly.
So what do people in authority, I know Maura Healey cares about this. I'm sure Rachel Rollins cares about this.
Well, I spoke with her also.
And what'd she say?
She said it's underreported, underprosecuted, and I want to do something about it. She just started a human trafficking unit, and my understanding is there's things...
She being Rachel Rollins,
yes,
U.S. Attorney.
Yep.
So, Catherine, you're now become an advocate for people who suffered in similar situations like yours. What's the message that you put out in your work?
You know, when I was out there, when I get out in my employer, it's really hard. I didn't have no one, but when the process goes through, a lot of people helping me. A lot of good people also helping me along the way. So I really need that to pass along, and also helping people that you can see that they're gonna change their life because of your help. It's really seems like it's a really good feelings.
So you're hoping to provide a support network for people so that when they're free, they can live, not just the freedom that they deserve, but also have what they need to make a transition to. Who helped you? Who was there for you when you finally were out?
Mostly Julie Dahlstrom. I'm really grateful that she's my lawyer. Mm-hmm. Also, the Baquita's house.
Mm-hmm.
She was put up with a house of nuns.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a kind of safe house that run by the nuns.
What's that mean? What did that mean to you? What did it mean to you?
Of course, it seems like it's a house for us, that it's helping support us, that when we are really in a down time of our life, they are the one who help us to lift it up. So yeah, we're so grateful.
So I'll have to say that Catherine had told me in our interview is that the nuns' house is now closed, and she's very concerned that there's no place for trafficking victims to go, and she's working with other advocates to try to find a place.
Well, I hope your reporting and your courage is going to convince other organizations to spend some dough. You know, I don't want to be all negative here about how horrible things are. One of the things it's actually at a BU. I know Healey was involved in the announcement. Explain what this app is and what the goal is.
So I think the Attorney General's office with the Boston University School of Law got together to create some app for actual people who are out in the field, either law enforcement or people who might have contact with people who are trafficked, to basically look at it and ask the right questions, because there are questions, I mean, so many people misunderstand it, and that's one of the things that we found, that there's just not enough training. And in other places... You
mean to even recognize it?
To even understand that it is trafficking, because in some states they mandate training for people who might be in contact. There has not been that type of thing here, even though when they passed this law a decade decade ago, it was recommended that there be some type of training. But at this point, people don't know even what to find out. And so they misunderstand it as a wage and hour violation, or they don't understand that someone can't leave their home.
Do you
or
think
can't
something
leave their
like that will
job.
help, this app? Do you think it'll help so that explain to people how to recognize situations like yours?
Yeah, absolutely. That ups if the result. Yes.
The result, that's what I should have said
Yeah.
that. That's what it's called. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I'm guessing this is not the end of the line. I know you a little bit, Jen. So I'm assuming there is more reporting to come. You're nodding in agreement. So
Thanks.
what's
Yeah,
what's next?
absolutely. This is an ongoing series, Trafficking, Inc., Forced Labor in Massachusetts. This was our first piece that we came out with. Now we have a piece coming out next week related to the immigration issues that a lot of people have when they are finally escape their traffickers, and yet there's so many obstacles in finding a way to survive. So that will be our next piece next week.
I want to do a spoiler kind of thing, but is there special support for people who've been lured into the country under these false pretenses and then kept like Catherine was? Or do they just face, I don't know, deportation? Is there...
So there is actually, 20 years ago when they passed this human trafficking law, they created a vehicle for people like Catherine to stay here. It's called a T visa. But as our reporting will show, there's still a lot of obstacles to get it and a lot of time and issues. So that's what we're looking at next week.
Great reporting as always,
Thank you
Jen.
so
It's great to
much.
see you, and I'm really glad to meet you, and I admire your
Thank
courage,
you so
Catherine. Good luck with your work. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Jenifer McKim, Catherine Piedad.